Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Week 12 NFL Preview Show. I'm Geoff Mosher. And as we start Week 12 in the NFL, we have yet another quarterback change. And I think we saw all this coming. I mentioned last week with the Giants going into the bye that I thought Daniel Jones had played his last snap as a Giant. He clearly has, as he has been sent to the bench. Now, they're obviously calling it football reasons because they can't come out and say it's financial reasons. He has a lot of money due to him for injury only next year. And why, if you're the Giants, knowing you're going to be on a new quarterback next year, hello, Shador Sanders, we'll see. Why would you risk getting Daniel Jones hurt and then having to be on the books for extra money? No, they're not taking money away from Daniel Jones either. This is not a disrespectful financial move. The money is only guaranteed if Daniel Jones was hurt. I'm sure Daniel Jones, as much as he loves the money, would like to be healthy also next year, be a free agent, maybe get a job where he can maybe be like the Sam Darnold of the offseason, where perhaps he's available to go to a better team and show he can play better, or at least go back up for a year somewhere or compete for a job somewhere. But the real story isn't Daniel Jones. It's who the Giants are going to as their quarterback. It is not Drew Lock, who I believe they gave $5 million to be a backup. It is good old Tommy Cutlets. Tommy DeVito will be the quarterback. Why does this make sense for the New York Giants? I've asked myself that question ever since they made the move. I'm not quite sure I understand it. I guess first of all, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because even if Drew Lock were to start the rest of the way, the Giants aren't going anywhere. They need a quarterback. They'll be picking in the top five. They know that. And I don't think this is tanking either. I don't think that they accidentally think they'll win some games by playing Drew Lock. I mean, this is Drew Lock we're talking about, okay? I don't think that the Giants' 53-man roster is good enough for them to think that by just merely inserting Drew Lock in for Daniel Jones, that they're going to accidentally stumble to two or three more wins and take themselves out of a really high draft pick. So if I'm looking to rationalize this the best way possible, I think the Giants are and I don't believe, let me make this clear. I don't believe they're going to Tommy DeVito because he's a North Jersey kid, Syracuse kid, Italian kid, all the stereotypes that play into the fact that, when he was starting quarterback last year, it galvanized North Jersey and the pizzerias, and he did his thing with his agent. I don't think the Giants are thinking selling an extra, I don't know what, 1,000 tickets because of Tommy DeVito is really going to make a difference as far as whether or not their stadium is empty or full come late November and December for their home games. I think if you're Brian Dable and you know that you're a bad team and you know you're losing games, do you go to Drew Lock just to go to Drew Lock because he's your backup quarterback? Or do you go to Tommy DeVito, who you want to find out a little more about? I don't mean find out a little bit more about as your starting quarterback for the future. I mean, find a little bit more about as do you have a guy who could be your backup for the future? Is there some juice there? He beat the Packers last year, which was a pretty impressive win. I know in some of his games, he won a couple of games. They were ugly. They ran the ball a lot. They may have gotten a defensive touchdown. I know that Tommy DeVito did not look like, the second coming of Tom Brady last year, even when they were winning. But he's athletic. He can move around. He can run. And if you're Brian Dable, you may want to see if this guy could be your backup for the next few years. Or do you have to do a wholesale change? It sounds like Brian Dable is confident enough that he's coming back next year that he can make this move, which probably is an indication that he will be back next year. And that is the only way I can rationalize this decision, is just to see what you've got out of this kid who raised your eyebrows a little bit in 2023, showed you he had something. I mean, guy was undrafted out of Syracuse, wasn't expected to make it in the league. Then he got thrown into a tough situation. It wasn't just that Daniel Jones got hurt, Tyrod Taylor got hurt, and then they played DeVito for as long as they could. he showed you a couple of things. Then, of course, he regressed back to being what you would expect from Tommy DeVito, and they did get Tyrod Taylor back in. But this is now a year later. He's been practicing with the team, and let's see what he's got. That's really the only way I can rationalize Brian Dable's decision here. And some of that makes sense to me. Not all of it, some of it. And obviously, he must have had ownership's backing to be able to make that move, and he must have explained it fairly well. And we'll see what they do as they have to play a Tampa Bay Bucks team that is coming out of the bye week and revving to go. So that will not be an easy first assignment, especially I always talk about young quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, or quarterbacks seeing something for the first time. Todd Bowles' defense, not great, but his formations, his schemes, the way he attacks quarterbacks can be very difficult for a young kid quarterback. So we'll see. The buys this week are the Falcons, the Bengals, the Saints, the Bills, the Jags, and the Jets. And if you were to say what teams need the bye week the most, it feels like 90% of these teams would raise their hand and say us. The Jags need the bye week. I mean, they just need the season to be over more than anybody. They're coming off of just an absolute pounding from the Lions. The Jets, we know the Jets are a disaster. They continue to be a disaster week after week after week. Their defense is just falling apart. So we know the Jets are very happy to be on the bye week. In fact, their coach even said, "Oh, the bye week came at a great time." Did it? Bye week came at a great time? Why? You're 3-8. You just lost to the Cardinals and the Colts back to back. What's the bye week going to do? Just delay a loss for another week? I mean, please, you're done. The bye week's not helping you out any bit. Falcons needed the bye week. They have played miserably going into their bye, losing 2 straight games and getting pummeled. I mean, they didn't even show up. They might as well have not gotten off the bus against the Broncos, losing 38-6. I said last week they were a very unreliable team. They're not a bad team, but they're undependable. They're 6-5. Is undependable a word? Well, you can't depend on them. 6-5, and they've lost 2 straight games to the Saints and the Broncos. They absolutely needed the bye week to just figure out their issues. And the Bengals, my gosh, they can't. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback wide receiver combination play as high of a level as you're seeing from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on a team that is 3 games under 500. I mean, these guys are lighting it up. They score 25 to 30 points a week and they lose. You know, they beat the Raiders 41-24 after that loss to the Eagles. Then they lose to the Ravens 35-34. 1 possession game, came down to the wire. Then they lose to the Chargers because their kicker at 27-27 in the fourth quarter misses not 1, but 2 field goals. I don't know what was going on last week for kickers missing field goals. You know, the McPherson misses for the Bengals. Then obviously that paves the way for overtime to happen and the Chargers to win in overtime. Tucker missed 2 field goals. Jake Elliott missed 2 field goals. I don't know what's going on with kickers, but the Bengals needed the bye week about as badly as any team, and we'll see what happens when they come out of the bye. Steelers are going to be tough. It's always a division game for them, so it's always difficult. They have to play the Steelers twice in their last 6 games, but they also have to play the Cowboys, the Titans, and the Browns. So 3 winnable games there. Maybe they can get to 7 wins. They're going to have to steal some wins here. You're going to have to beat the Broncos in week 17, probably, because you're competing with them for a wild card spot, and you may have to take 2 of those Steelers games. At 4-7, the Bengals probably have to win out. At least go 5-1 in their last 6 games to be able to make a wild card game as the last seed, probably. So they got a lot. They got a big road ahead of them, but you can't say the quarterback's not playing at a high level. I mean, it's been unbelievable week after week. Not a lot of great 1:00 games this week. Vikings at Bears. Vikings are 3.5-point favorites in Chicago. I told you Sam Darnold was going to settle down, and he did. All right, he's been settling down, and he had no interceptions last game. He did lose a fumble, but in general, the offense has not been great, but the defense for the Vikings is back to looking really good. The defense led by Brian Flores is what makes the Minnesota Vikings go, and you're getting just enough from Kevin O'Connell coaching that offense and getting Sam Darnold to play within himself. They beat Tennessee 23-13. Yes, it's a cupcake win, but you just wanted to see Darnold play better, threw 2 touchdowns, so that was good for him. They improved to, and listen, they're formidable. They improved to 8-2. Do I think that they're the scariest 8-2 team I've ever seen? No, but the bottom line is they're in contention for the #1 seed, and they'll be a tough out in the playoffs because of their defense. And look at their schedule. They get the Bears this week. The Bears got like a tiny little bit of a offensive spark going to Thomas Brown as their offensive coordinator, but they still lost. They lost to the Packers because they had a field goal blocked, and that's now 4 straight losses for them. They're in a free-for-all. Yes, they ran the ball better. Yes, they played the Packers well. Yes, Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift kind of got going in that game, but I don't know if the Bears are going to win another game for the rest of the year. Because after this game against the Vikings, they have the Lions, the 49ers, the Vikings again, the Lions again, and then the Seahawks and the Packers. Can they win one or two of those games? Yes, if they play very well and get some really good play from their quarterback. And their defense is always going to keep them in games like it did against Green Bay. But you're going to need to score some points to beat the Lions. Probably going to need to score some points to beat the Vikings. 49ers as well. So I don't know. It's very possible that the Bears, who at one point were 4-2 and looking formidable, and are now at 4-6, it's very possible that they finish 4-13, which is hard to believe. Well, not I guess if you're a Bears fan and you've seen the Bears over the last few years, but hard to believe that they were 4-2 and could finish with just 4 wins. Lions at Colts. The Lions right now, I mean, that wasn't even a fair fight last week against the Giants. They win 52-6, and the Lions just flex their muscles week after week. I mean, playing the Jags was like taking a cake and candy from a baby for them. They're just on a roll, and until somebody else proves otherwise, they are either the best team in the NFL or the best team in the NFC at least. You know, I know that people want to make an argument for the Eagles. I'm sure there are people that want to make an argument for the Vikings and maybe some other Packers. Doesn't matter to me. Right now, the Lions look like the most complete team. Doesn't mean you etch it in stone that they're going to be in the Super Bowl. But if you're a bettor, you would think that the Lions would be the team to beat right now to go to the NFC. To go to the Super Bowl representing the NFC and to win their first Super Bowl. Now, at least this week, they're playing a team that's a little bit tougher and should offer some resistance. The Colts got, back on the winning track. Anthony Richardson had probably the best game of his career, led a nice fourth quarter win against the Jets, who just can't, close the deal against anybody. But still, Anthony Richardson looked good. The Colts got to 5-6. And this will be a good test for them. I mean, I don't think the Colts are going to win, but I think that 7.5 is kind of a big number for them at home. The Colts after this game, they'll have the Patriots, the Broncos, the Titans, the Giants, and the Jags. Don't count them out. Do not count them out of a wild card. If they can even if they can't beat the Lions, let's say they fall the Lions, go to 5-7, beat the Titans, beat the Giants, then you'll be 500. Then you got the Jags after that. You'll have a chance. Gonna have a chance. Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jags. You can win. If you're the Colts, you probably feel like you can win at least 3, if not 4, of those games. And if you can beat the Lions, that would make you even more in contention for a wild card spot. Patriots at Dolphins. Hey, look, Drake May is coming along nicely. He's lifting a very bad Patriots team. And even in a loss, they lost to the Rams last week, but even in a loss, you see good things. You see completions. You see his athletic ability. You see his pocket navigation, okay? You see him get the ball down the field, even though he doesn't have a great set of offensive weapons. So there's bright spots there. If you're the Patriots right now, you're feeling pretty good. You know you're going to be picking pretty high in the draft, and you're not worried that you missed on the quarterback right now. You're worried about addressing that offensive line, addressing that defensive line, because you need to do that when you're a Northeast cold weather team. And that's how the Patriots used to win. I get it. Yes, they had Brady. We all know that. But Belichick's defense was always tough in the trenches. And Brady's offensive line was always big guy. I mean, you can go up and down. They're Pro Bowlers everywhere, at tackle, at guard, at center. They're going to have to address that to help Drake May and to be competitive again. And right now, this week, they're facing a Miami team, 7-point favorites. Miami is on a mission. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when Tua came back, and even when they lost a game where they scored a decent amount of points. I said you could tell that with Tua for Miami is like an old glove in that, when you have like think about your baseball glove, right? If you've worn a baseball glove for 5, 6, 7 years, it contorts to your hand. That's your glove. Somebody else puts it on, doesn't fit right. You put a different quarterback in this Dolphins offense, it's not the same. You put Tua in there, and all of a sudden, you've got an offense that looks the way it is supposed to look. And you saw increments of that even when they lost to the Bills 3 weeks ago. They scored 27 points in the loss, and now they've come and won back-to-back games against the Rams, against the Raiders, and they think they're in it. And they could be. Again, in the AFC, if you can be one game over 500, you're going to be bidding for that last wild card spot. The one thing I wonder about the Dolphins offense is it's just not as explosive as it's been. They now are getting the ball to Tyreek Hill more consistently. They've been getting the ball to Devin Achane, the runner, in both the running and the pass game. But Waddle has sort of disappeared from that offense. They seem to get the ball to Jonnu Smith and now Tyreek Hill, and of course Devin Achane, more than they've been able to get it to Waddle. Maybe they're seeing a lot more too high defenses this year because they've been so explosive. I don't know. That should open it up underneath, and maybe that's why Achane has been such a good runner and underneath the receiver. But I think in order for the Dolphins to truly be what they want to be, they have to get more explosive plays from Hill and from Waddle. They are not a matriculate the ball down the field type of team, but they've kind of been that even in their wins over the last 2 weeks. So see if they can unlock their deep game against this Patriots defense. Bucks at Giants, we talked about a little bit. The Bucks need a statement win. They really, really slumped into the bye. I mean, they lost, obviously losing Chris Godwin really hurt them. It didn't kill their offense, but it just hurt them. And of course, Evans was out for a while. They were looking good at 3-2. They had beaten the Saints 51-27. Things were flying high. They were 4-2 at that point. And then bam, 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 bam. Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, 49ers saddled them with 4 straight losses, 4-6. But like I said, they're not out of it. They're 2 games behind the Falcons, but the Falcons just they haven't gotten right. So now the Falcons are off and they have a chance to make up a game, and you're playing the Giants who are starting Tommy DeVito. So you got to feel good if you're the Bucks about a chance to win this game. And then if you can get to 5-6, you got the Panthers, the Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. All right. In those 6 games I just mentioned, let's say 7 with the Giants this week, 6 seem really winnable. All right, the Chargers game might be difficult. I'm not saying they can't beat the Chargers, but of all the games, that's the one that looks the most difficult. And it's not like the Chargers are 9-1. So there's an opportunity here for the Bucks to really get on a roll, to win 6 of these last 7, get themselves to 10 wins. The only issue they face is that they've already lost twice to the Falcons. Okay, they've got to figure out a way to end the season 1 game above the Falcons so it doesn't come down to a tiebreaker. Falcons got the bye, but they have a much tougher schedule. They'll have to also play the Chargers, they'll have to play the Vikings, and they'll have to play the Commanders. So there's an opportunity for the Bucks, who I thought would win this division, to make up that ground and try to win this division by a game. Cowboys at Commanders. Cowboys 3-7. They're getting healthier on defense. Obviously they lost to Houston pretty badly. These teams hate each other, though. Cowboys, Commanders, I don't care what the talent level is. Just like we've seen the Commanders give the Eagles issues in past years where they've been horrible. This game is never just written in stone, okay? It's never just going to be a huge win for one or the other team just because. These teams don't like each other. It's an NFC East game. I think 10.5 is kind of a high number that the Commanders are favored by. So I would stay away from this game because certainly the Commanders could cover it, but I certainly could see them sweating it out as well. Is Jaden Daniels hurt? The team says no. You watch him against the Eagles. He did not have the same torque on his throws that he had earlier in the year. I just don't feel comfortable with that 10.5 point margin for the Commanders here, given the history of this rivalry, how these teams feel about each other. There's always something going on. And the Cowboys at some point are giving, especially on defense, are going to give you a little bit of fight. They got chippy against the Texans in that game. They'll get chippy against the Commanders. They're gonna have to be the chippy team right now with all their injuries and just overall lousiness that they've got, especially at quarterback there, to try to impose teams, especially when they're on the road. So that one will be an interesting one. Chiefs at Panthers. The Chiefs are 11-point favorites. The Chiefs can relax now. They got the loss over with. Not surprising that they lost to Buffalo in the regular season. That happens for them. It's the playoffs that matter. I'll give Sean McDermott a lot of credit. They were up by 2 in the fourth quarter. It was 4th down. I feel like in the past, McDermott would have punted and said, I'll rely on my defense. He's a defensive coach, defensive minded. He's learned his lesson. 2-point lead against the Chiefs. No matter how dominant you are, no matter how bad the Chiefs are playing, 2 points is not going to do it. He learned, goes for it on 4th down. And then, of course, Josh Allen, who is entered the conversation. He has entered the MVP conversation. Not the front runner, but he's entered the conversation. He rips off a huge run for a touchdown on 4th down that breaks the back of the Chiefs and makes the deficit just too big with the little time left to play in the game. So congratulations to the Bills. They continue to play well. The Chiefs, so what? You lost the game. You're still probably going to be the top seed in the AFC. Your problems that you've had all year long probably aren't going away as far as trying to find some explosion in your offense, although they might get Pacheco back. That'll help. But I think the Chiefs will be all right. Their defense is still great. And, of course, they play the Panthers this week. The Panthers, they're not very good. Now, the Panthers have won 2 straight, and they're 3-7, but who cares? Who cares if they're what I mean by who cares is who cares if you're saying, well, all they've done is beat the Saints and Giants. If you're the Panthers, you don't care if you're beating the Sisters of the Poor and the University of Carolina Coastal Tech. All right. You were at 1.1-7. You lost 6 straight games. All right. Nobody even thought the Panthers would win another game, and they've won 2 straight. So congratulations to Dave Canales. And the fact that you were able to do it, Bryce Young, is good. Let's see how the kid continues to progress. It's going to be a tough one, obviously, against the Chiefs. I'm not expecting much. Can they make it close? Can they keep it a game? Can they run with Chuba Hubbard and play some good defense? We'll see. We'll see. But, congrats to the Panthers. They won 2 straight games, and it doesn't really matter if they didn't beat anybody good because they're not good. So we'll see how they do against the Chiefs. The last 1:00 game is Titans at Texans. The Texans are coming off the big win against Dallas. They're 7-4. They've got control of the AFC South. This is a nice soft part of the schedule. You move on from playing the Cowboys to playing Tennessee. Tennessee is not very good, so they should be fine. The big issue for them is just being more consistent offensively. I think Nico Collins coming back helps them. Their offensive line's got to play better. But again, good thing for them is that they're playing the Titans, so getting to 8-4 will be very realistic. Titans will probably have to wait until week 14 to get their next win. That's when they play the Jags because they're just not a very good team and they're playing for a top 5 pick. All right, the 4:00 games. Broncos are 5.5-point favorites in Las Vegas against the Raiders. Hey, give the Broncos credit. They're 6-5. Their defense has been very good from the start. What they call it their no-name defense, because most of their best players like Jonathan Cooper are not household names except for maybe Patrick Surtain. But I'm really talking about their defensive front. It's got a bunch of guys, Zach Allen, who play really well, play good. They're obviously Vance Joseph is doing a great job with the defensive front, but they just don't have household names, but they get it done week after week after week. And I've been saying since I started this show, don't worry about how it looks in the first month in September for Bo Nix. He's going to come along in this Sean Payton offense. Remember, the thing about Bo Nix is he's a little more athletic than he gets credit for, and he started a truckload of games in college, and he played on the biggest stages, both at Auburn and Oregon. And so he's not phased. He's going to do what Sean Payton wants him to do. He's going to add a little spice to the passing game. He's not going to wow you like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, but he's going to play within the system and execute the offense with the little few playmakers he's got. He makes the most out of it. So you give Bo Nix a lot of credit. They're 6-5. They have not beaten a whole lot of great teams. I mean, they have a win over Tampa. I don't know if that's a great win. They've got, a soft schedule as you would imagine, but they've taken care of the teams that they're supposed to take care of. I guess their next best win would be Atlanta. They've beaten Tampa and Atlanta. And again, those aren't great wins, but hey, who thought the Broncos would be in it for a wild card the way their last two seasons went and the way they were starting over at quarterback? The Raiders, listen, they're just thrilled that they hit on Brock Bowers, and they did. That was one that they needed to make it work. They made it work. Brock Bowers has a great future, and now for the Raiders, it's just about finding the right quarterback, the right offensive coaching staff, the right running game, and complementary weapons, because Bowers is a star in the making, and they need a quarterback who can get him the ball. Until then, the Raiders aren't really worth talking about. 49ers at Packers. Man, talk about, I really thought the Niners were going to take off, and they lose to a Seattle team that they had already beaten in Seattle, and Seattle was coming out of the bye. I think they had lost 2 straight going into the bye. I'm a little surprised, but here's what we're seeing about the Niners, right? And it's kind of like what we talked about with the Philadelphia Eagles. When they're not at full strength, they're just not the same offensively. We saw that with the Eagles when they don't have an A.J. Brown or they don't have Devontae Smith. And the Niners can overcome not having Brandon Ayuk as long as they have everybody else. But they didn't have Kittle in that game against Seattle. And really, even with getting Christian McCaffrey back, I think it just matters to them when they don't have guys like Kittle. And then Brock Purdy, I guess, hurt his shoulder. It was sore. We'll see how that affects him. But they need Kittle and they need McCaffrey and Debo all to play. Because when they don't, when you lose that, and of course with Ayuk out for the year, they're not the same. And of course, and their defense has had some letdowns and had a letdown late in that game against Seattle. But they're the type of team that needs to score a lot of points with the weapons they have. Hopefully Kittle will play this week, and I think Purdy will be able to play and McCaffrey back. So I think it'll be a little bit more what you expect from the 49ers, but they're playing a tough Packers team, a Packers team that itself at 7-3 is playing well, but isn't necessarily dominating. I mean, they beat a bad Bears team because they blocked a field goal. Second straight week that a good team wins on a field goal block. Kansas City winning against Denver 2 weeks before that. The Packers they're not clicking on all cylinders, but they are 7-3. They are 7-3. So this is a good game. This is a good game between two teams that have big expectations, have not clicked on all cylinders, have had to deal with injuries for most of the season. And whoever wins this game, I mean, your Packers, you win the game, you're 8-3, you're feeling pretty good about where you're at and trying to overtake the Lions, or at least getting the highest seed you can get. And if you're the Niners, you win this game, you're in a division where anybody can win it. And 6-5 for them would probably make them feel pretty good about keeping in contention to win the NFC West. And if they lose the game, they're probably not going to feel too terrible. I mean, 5-6 and 2 straight losses wouldn't be good. But again, the NFC West is anybody's division, and this game is anybody's game. Should be a good one. Cardinals at Seahawks. The thing about the Cardinals is you hope that they have won 4 in a row going into the bye. You love going into the bye on a win, but you don't want to lose the momentum that you have when you've had 4 straight wins. And now they've sitting around for a week, and then Seattle comes and gets hot by beating the 49ers. And this is, of course, a big NFC West game. So we'll see if Seattle can continue its momentum, or if the Cardinals can shake off that bye week or feel healthy and rejuvenated and get their 5th straight win. This is a very competitive division. None of the teams are great, but they're all good, and any one of them can win if they bring their A game. And all 4 teams got some pretty good quarterbacks. Kyler's playing well. Geno Smith plays better than I think he gets credit for. Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback, obviously, for the Rams. And we know Brock Purdy is a good quarterback for the 49ers. So that's why I think this division is so up for grabs because there's not a team that really lags behind as far as quarterback play. You're getting four guys who can all have an A game and win on that day. Just shows you how tight that division is. It's a good division, the NFC West. I think it's a fun division, and we'll see who can outlast who when it comes down to the end. We'll obviously talk about the 8 o'clock game. It's tonight. It's Eagles Rams, and we'll have that. We have that covered on the pregame show. I'll just say this: the Eagles are on quite a roll, and you got to go out to LA. You got to continue to be on a roll. They're the better team. There's no doubt about it. But eventually, the Eagles are going to lose a game. I don't think they're going to win from here on out. Now, maybe it's the Ravens, maybe it's Steelers, but I don't expect them to just go into LA and beat the Rams up by 30 points. I think it's going to be a pretty tough game, and I think it'll be an interesting test for the Eagles secondary that has played really, really well behind the young guys, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean lately, and of course Reed Blankenship too. This will be a good test for the Eagles. All right, the Monday night game, Ravens at Chargers. It's the Harbaugh Bowl. Jim versus John. It's the first time they're matching up against each other since Jim's Ravens beat John's Niners in Super Bowl 46. John's team is better. Jim's team is hotter. Chargers have won 4 straight. The Ravens are 0-2 against the AFC West this year, which is hard to believe. The Ravens' pass defense is not great, but the Chargers' pass offense isn't great either. Justin Herbert is playing better. He had a tough game against the Bengals. I know they scored 34 points, but he completed 47% of his passes. It felt like after the first 3 drives, Herbert really had a tough time moving the ball. And then the Bengals did what they keep doing, is keep you in a game, keep you in a game, keep you in a game. And then Herbert made a big play in overtime for them to be able to win. The Ravens are the better team, and it would concern me if I'm the Chargers that the Ravens are coming off that loss to the Steelers. I think they're going to be pretty fired up to get back in the win column. And I think the talent differential is going to be on display here. I'm not saying the Chargers are going to get whacked. I think it'll be a good game, but the Ravens are clearly the better team. And I would expect them to be able to win this game. All right, so my 3 picks against the spread. Now, last week I was 2-1. I had the Dolphins covering the 8 against the Raiders. They did. I had the Texans covering 7.5 in Dallas. They were able to do that. I should have been 3-0 because I had the Bengals covering 2.5 at the Chargers, but because McPherson missed 2 field goals, which would have probably, any one of them probably would have won the game by 3 for the Bengals. Because of that, the game went to overtime and I lost. So I'm 2-1 last week, and overall I am 18-15. This week, I like the Broncos getting 5 points in Vegas at the Raiders. The Broncos defense has been playing really well. I don't really love picking division games, especially rivalry games like AFC West rivalry that this is. But I like the way the Broncos are playing, and the Raiders just don't have too much outside of Brock Bowers. So can the Broncos win this game by 2 field goals? Yeah, I see that happening. I'm going to take the Patriots to cover the 7. I'm sorry, the Dolphins to cover the 7 against the Patriots. I think the Dolphins, like I said, are on a mission. They're at home. I do like what I've seen from Drake May, but I think going into Miami against this explosive offense, I think they're going to figure some more things out offensively. The Dolphins are, and I can see them winning this game by double digits. And I'm going to stick my neck out here a little bit. The Colts are getting 7.5 points at home against the Lions. I know the Lions are on a roll. I know they're waxing everybody. I mean, the Colts were at least a formidable team. This isn't the Jags. And the Colts are home. The Colts have played some good defense this year. I'm not saying the Colts are going to win, but in order for the Lions to have to cover 7.5, they're probably going to have to win by 9 or more. And I don't know that they're going to do that. I'm going to put some faith in the Colts to at least make this a game. I'm not saying they're going to win. They're probably not going to win, but I can see them holding their own, maybe losing like by 6 or 7. And again, 7.5 point. That's just a little bit too high for me. I shouldn't put it past the Lions, but I'm going to go with the Colts here to cover that 7.5 point spread against the Lions. All right, those are my 3 picks. Everybody enjoy your football watching. We'll catch you next week.